Hey, Pro Jen, welcome back to the Kristan Hawkins Show. Today we're going to talk about the election results last week in Virginia and in New York State. I'm not even going to talk about New Jersey because we all knew what was going to happen in New Jersey. I also want to talk about some really disgusting IVF jewelry. You've got to hear about this. And some new polling, well, newish, came out in August. Polling apparently just made the waves on social media, revealing that Americans don't support the current abortion pill regime. And my fundamental question is, why isn't the pro-life administration doing anything to stop it? Finally, I'm going to react to some trending clips on social media. All right, so first up today, I need to talk about the elections that happened last week in case you missed my Instagram Live, which you should not miss because I'd like to give real-time updates when kind of political things are happening that sometimes can be a little confusing. As you heard by now, that Democrats swept the night last Tuesday in New Jersey. A pro-abortion governor won. That's not really a surprise. It's always been a blue state, and the Republican running wasn't really pro-life, so we didn't have a dog in that race, sadly. The communist Marxist won in New York State. Madami, he won as the mayor of New York City. God save us from my generation, the millennials who are just now running for office. It's Gen Z needs to hurry up and run for office quickly. We'll get into that later. And then also in California, a horrendous ballot referendum passed to basically allow Democrats to jerry-rig districts and take away Republican seats in House of Representatives. And also in Virginia, we saw a devastating defeat for Republicans. I'm going to dive into that. So first, let's talk about Virginia, okay? The bright spot, which you may not have heard about, is that our very own Tina Whittington, our Executive Vice President, Students for Life Action, my partner in crime for more than 15 years, actually won her District 4 seat on the Orange County School Board. School boards are incredibly important, particularly in Virginia, where the public schools there can't seem to stop wanting to allow men in women's bathrooms and sports. And we also had the whole case in Fairfax County not long ago where we believe administrators and teachers were helping to facilitate minor abortion. So yeah, the school system in Virginia is whacked out, and we are so excited Tina was elected and is going to be breathing some fresh air from fresh common sense and accountability to her own school system. And Tina was our first future pro-life champion participant, meaning we worked with Tina, with Students for Life Action, to ensure Tina's victory. And we were door knocking for Tina, did some mail, some advertising, very excited. And I want to tell you now, we are 1 for 1 in our future pro-life champions program at Students for Life Action. So if you are thinking about running for office in 2026, whether it's school board, state legislature, U.S. Congress, please reach out to us to see if you can be a participant in our future pro-life champions program. If you're thinking about 2028, even better, because we will have more time to help you win. You can just email our team, and you can email Mary Briganti on our team. Just email her at mbriganti, Briganti, at studentslife.org to get information and get enrolled immediately into our future pro-life champions program. If you're running for 2026, that's kind of an urgent thing. If 2028, we'll be announcing a website in December, which you can sign up for. All right. So we had this awesome victory in Virginia. Once again, we're 1 for 1 in our future pro-life champions program, but there was a lot of sobering news coming out of Virginia. I would be remiss to tell you we didn't think that this was going to be the outcome, because we did. And the polls, the early voting, just the way the candidates are running their campaigns leading up to the election made it pretty clear that Democrats were going to sweep Virginia. Now, you might have this question, why Virginia? What happened in Virginia? What happens in Virginia is what happens when you have a massive federal government, bloated federal government, that pays people basically not to do too much, and they all live in the same spot, Northern Virginia. So Northern Virginia has basically ruined the state of Virginia for everybody else. So Southern Virginia, my friends in Southern Virginia are the first ones to tell you that what happens in Northern Virginia is not reflective on their state, and they're truly embarrassed. I don't want to go this podcast blaming all Virginians for this, but Northern Virginia is ruining it for the rest of everybody else, and it's because of the federal government. And the federal government workers were kind of mad because there was a shutdown, and they weren't getting paid. And what we saw literally the day after the election last Wednesday, after weeks, we were in day 35 or something, weeks of a federal shutdown. The day after the election, Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader in the House, Schumer, the minority leader in the Senate, finally on Wednesday reached out to President Trump and said, okay, maybe it's time to end the shutdown. Meaning they literally kept the government shut down to win the election. That's right. The party that's supposed to be caring about poor people and their SNAP benefits, the food benefits, to feed hungry families, literally forced millions of families to worry if they were going to get their food benefits. I mean, the real ones, not the grifters that are like stealing our SNAP benefits. The real families who truly, genuinely need our SNAP benefits, they were forced to make decisions about how to spend their money, what they were going to do, were fearing for how they were going to feed their kids, all because Democrats wanted to win the election in Virginia. That is a story that is not being reported, but is 100% true. The shutdown was about the election. So if you ever wondered how extreme Democrats really are, yes, they will destroy in order to build. They actually believe that. So, I mean, they literally shot my friend and cheered and celebrated it. And if you needed further affirmation of how extreme the Democrats are, think about this. The Attorney General candidate, Jay Jones, who had in text messages fantasized about killing then I think it was the Republican Speaker of the House of Delegates in Virginia, had fantasized about killing him. Remember, he said if he had a gun with 2 bullets and there was Pol Pot, Hitler, or this Republican, he would use 2 bullets on this Republican all day long. He literally put that in text message and then fantasized about his kids dying because it's only when people feel pain will they move on our issue. He actually won. He won. The majority of Virginia voters voted for him over a decent, good man and the Republican Jason Mraz, who happens also to be pro-life. Jay Jones won. Crazy. If you just kind of stepped off a foreign planet and needed someone to explain American politics for you, Democrats hate you. They hate us. They hate the other side. They would rather vote for somebody who is, regardless of his stance, the fact that he's besties with Planned Parenthood or whatever, a man who's obviously morally bankrupt, who would put this in writing. First of all, tells you a lot about your morality, right? That you would fantasize and relish in the fact that someone's kids would die. But then he was dumb enough to put it in writing. I mean, who are you electing, Virginia? A morally bankrupt, retarded person. That's where you're at. He's stupid. So that's what happened in Virginia. So Abigail Spanberger, a U.S. member of House of Representatives who's staunchly pro-abortion, she's governor. You had a lieutenant governor who's staunchly pro-abortion win, the AG who's staunchly pro-abortion and also just wants to kill even born people, which, is the logical end of a pro-abortion mindset. That's what happened in Virginia. Now, what does that actually mean for the rest of us? And why am I going off about Virginia, right? Because in Virginia, they hope by May 2026, 7 months, they want to have a ballot referendum, a constitutional ballot referendum in the primary elections to change the Virginia Constitution to allow abortion all 9 months for whatever reason. Why? Because all the states around Virginia have moved to either heavily restrict or somewhat restrict or totally ban abortion. And Virginia wants to be the safe haven of killing babies in the American South. So they want to change the Virginia Constitution. This will dramatically increase the number of abortions in Virginia. We're talking 20 to 30,000 babies more dead who will die because of this. And it will essentially create this safe haven system where the abortion industries in Tennessee and North Carolina will just ship all of their girls, because abortion is also complicit in human trafficking, into Virginia to kill their babies and cover up continued sex crimes. So that's what's at stake. Also, what's at stake is something that started the week before the election when Democrats knew they were going to win handily. They called everybody back to Richmond and they had them vote on another constitutional ballot referendum that they hoped to put on the ballot in May that would nullify their 2020 bipartisan redistricting commission. And they said they wanted options. Their goal is, because they know like talking about redistricting and gerrymandering district isn't like really popular even with Democrats, is to attach this to the abortion momentum to get all the leftists out to vote in May for the abortion amendment. Then they'll probably just check the box for the redistricting amendment. It will nullify the bipartisan commission and basically say whoever controls the Virginia legislature gets to control the redistricting for the U.S. congressional seats. They want this passed in May. Why? Because they want to strip the 3 remaining Republican House of Representatives leaders from the U.S. House, and they want to take away their districts by gerrymandering them to get a bunch of Democrats or like what they'll say like minority communities in these districts so that Republicans at the House of Representatives will lose more seats. And they're saying they're doing this in response to Texas, which, by the way, Texas redistricting was court ordered. This is what California did. This is a big deal because even if you don't live in Virginia, even if you're nowhere near Virginia, you should care about this because in case you have been living under a rock, we have a slim pro-life, slim Republican majority in the House of Representatives. The fact that we were able to defund Planned Parenthood, 80% of our taxpayer dollars for 1 year in the big beautiful bill, the BBB, happened specifically because we had a pro-life Republican majority in the House of Representatives. So if Democrats using the California redistricting scheme and now what they hope to be this Virginia redistricting scheme can take away the remaining, like the few Republican elected leaders who are going to Congress from California and Virginia, if they can take away those votes, they can take away the pro-life Republican majority in the House of Representatives, and we will not be able to defund Planned Parenthood with any budget reconciliation packages, which once again is why debarment is key. Do not be fooled, by the way. I've been hearing people are like, we're going to demand that Congress defund Planned Parenthood fully. And then I go to those people's websites and it's like this like petition and you send a member page. There's no bill mentioned or whatever. Don't be fooled by that. There are only 3 ways you can defund Planned Parenthood. 1, you can pass a bill, which we can't do because we still have the filibuster in the Senate and we don't have 60 votes to break the filibuster. So we can't actually pass the defund Planned Parenthood federal bill because we can't break the filibuster. Now, President Trump wants to get rid of the filibuster because he wants to get some massive election reforms, so like to stop the mail-in voting schemes that are corrupting. I don't disagree with him on that. I do have concerns about the filibuster because if you take away the filibuster, they'll take away when they're in power. Although I probably could be convinced of taking the filibuster because honestly, once again, Democrats are out to destroy. And they've proven it time and time again the past few months. But you can't really pass a defund Planned Parenthood bill. So don't fall for that. And when we're going to have a budget reconciliation, fight starting in January, we can fight to get Planned Parenthood defunded for 10 years, which is the maximum amount you can do in a defund bill, in a budget bill, which we already did pass out of the House of Representatives this June. It was the Senate and the unelected parliamentarian that John Thune was allowed to stay in office, even though she was literally appointed and groomed and trained by Democrat leaders. She took it out from 10 years to 1 year. So she should be gone. And hopefully we can get a defund for 10 years in the budget reconciliation bill that the Senate won't weaken. That's one way, but that's still not permanent. The most permanent way we can do it is something called debarment. I've been talking about that a lot. I think I'm going to do another podcast episode on that soon. But debarment is a 3-year, 100% stop, not 80%. 100% on any federal funds. You can't even apply for federal funds agency-wide, all the various agencies in the government for 3 years, and you can't do business with any other contractors that receive governmental funds. It would be crippling to Planned Parenthood. So we're going to talk about that later in future podcasts. But just FYI, that's what you're going to be hearing me and other pro-life leaders talk about. But stay on your guard because you've got to be kind of cued into what the political reality is to where we need to go. I am so proud, despite the loss in Virginia and what we saw and just the insanity of Virginia. I am so proud of our team of Students for Life Action. With barely any money, we overshot our door knocking goal, so we reached almost 20,000, might even be more, 20,000 doors with student volunteers. Nobody was paid. I think we barely were able to cover the food costs. We sent out personal peer-to-peer text messages to over 154,000 voters who were kind of in key House districts, made over 13,000 phone calls. The tally was just amazing for just the little bit of amount of money we were given through our supporters to kind of direct it towards Virginia. But we've got a long way to go. So now we're going to need you, because now we're going to be fighting this ballot referendum fight in Virginia come January 1st. We know the legislature will vote quickly to get on the ballot. It needs 2 votes. I've already explained it. It needs the founding fathers who were the founding fathers of Virginia, not just our country, were very key in how they worded these constitutional amendments in Virginia, which is very smart. You have to get a vote by one legislature, have an election, and then have another vote. So they've already had one vote earlier this year. They've had an election. Now they're going to vote again. But if you want to sign up and kind of stay in touch with all that we're going to have to do in Virginia, go to studentsforlifeaction.org/Virginia, sign up there, and that's how we're going to start contacting you about various opportunities. So now let's talk about New York. So Zohran Madami won. He'll be the next mayor of America's largest city. You could probably argue one of the most consequential, most important cities in the world. To be frank, his policies resemble communism. Now, he says he's a Muslim, and he just opened up a meeting recently saying Allah Akbar. I don't really understand how he's a Muslim, because he's pro-transgender. He wants to spend all this taxpayer money on opening up these trans clinics for people of any age, even minors, to come to New York and permanently sterilize themselves. He also has said he wants to protect New Yorkers from pregnancy resource centers and close pregnancy resource centers. Yeah, it's law unconstitutional. Good luck seeing court on that one. He's totally pro-abortion. His wife doesn't dress like someone who's practicing Islam. So I don't know. Who knows? It's actually more scary than anything else, because he's just saying he's Muslim, but is he really Muslim? But let's talk about what we know he 100% is. He 100% is a Marxist. He wants to take socialist, communist principles and apply them to New York City. And he won with a city that's majority non-American born, who are struggling to make ends meet. His policies sounded pretty good. This is the problem that the GOP has to face, especially with Gen Z, right? If you can't just have good messaging or a messenger. You actually have to have policies that are going to relieve the burden. And we've seen, especially with this generation, struggling to even be able to save up enough money or to afford a home. And so now you've seen, since the election, Trump administration kind of floating like a 50-year mortgage, and people are like, what? That's crazy. There's a whole conversation about that happening. But let's be very clear. Communist regimes have never been friendly to preborn children or true freedom. Because when you have state control and the state gets to decide everything, and whether it's been from the Soviet Union to China, anytime you have a communist regime, the state gets to decide who can be born and when they can be born. Abortion and sterilization are not about choice. It's about the government deciding whose lives are worth continuing. In the Soviet Union, actually, abortion was first legalized in 1920. It was then banned in 1936 to boost birth rates, and then re-legalized in 1955. The message was very clear. It was the state, not the individual, who decided when human life could exist and when human life was important. More human life was important to the state. And let's also be clear, communism isn't just an experiment. It has been tried, and we all know how it ends, and it always ends badly. That's why so many people are so sad to see what happened in New York City. We know New York City is full of leftists, right? But we all also want to see our country succeed. And when the largest city in our country now is being run by a Marxist Islamicist, we could have some serious problems, and that's going to trickle down to all of us. It always ends badly. Communism Marxism always ends badly. In China, they had the CCP has had the one-child policy, which forced millions of abortions and sterilizations. In fact, there's over like 30,000 abortions that happen every day in China. And it was all about their population numbers. Now it's a disaster, right? They changed it to the 2-child policy. Now maybe it's a 3-child policy, depending on how much money you have, because they realize they have a problem because everybody only wanted boys, because boys will protect and stay with your family and are a good retirement policy, right, for parents. But girls leave and join the boys' family, the man's family. And so girls weren't a good retirement policy. So you had this massive cases of gendercide happening, which the feminist movement has never talked about. That's now basically created this problem in China where human trafficking and people are like buying baby girls at birth to have them ready to give to their husbands so they can have a mate. Yeah. In Romania, the Romanian regime did the opposite. Through communism, they banned abortion and contraception to expand their population. Also not something you want to do. You want to ban abortion because it kills human beings. If you have a government that's banning abortion because you need more babies, that's still not seeing the child in the womb as a unique human being who has inalienable rights just like us. It's a tool of state control. Cuba has used abortion. They've normalized abortion. It's population management through their state-run healthcare system. Because all of this, the Marxist ideology, the core of the Marxist ideology is the belief that a person's value is tied to their role in the collective. Karl Marx wrote, quote, "The human essence is no abstraction inherent in each single individual." Translated, individuals have no intrinsic worth apart from their social utility. This is why Marxism is so contradictory to the pro-life position. You cannot be a communist and be pro-life. Don't give me the bullshit. You can't. Because Marxism, communism, views people, including preborn children, as expendable when they do not advance the overall collective's plan. I mean, this is what's so wrong about state-run healthcare, right? So during the Obama years, President Obama appointed a man named Donald Bierwick to head CMS, Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services, the same job that Dr. Oz has. And that's like, our largest healthcare in the country, right? Medicaid, government healthcare for poor people, Medicare, government healthcare for old people. Super important, right? Could be marginalized community groups. And Donald Bierwick was a recess appointment. He actually later resigned because when it came time for him to actually be confirmed by Senate, there was no way to confirm him because Bierwick had published openly in one of the top medical journals in the country, The Lancet, that as an individual, as an American, your value to the healthcare system is dependent on your age. And he had like a bell curve, right? That until you were 15 years old, the state was putting all these resources into you, public schooling, paid lunch, all this stuff. So you didn't really have much value to the state at that moment. And then after 45, shit starts breaking in your body, right? You have to get knee replacements, hip replacements, cancer, whatever. And then you start to become a drain on the healthcare system because things start to break and get expensive. And so he argued that when you have to, provide healthcare in a state-run system, priority healthcare goes to people 15 to 45 because they're the ones who contribute the most to society. This guy was literally in charge of Center for Medicaid and Medicare Services. And you wonder why he had to resign because he couldn't get confirmed by Senate. I know no one remembers this. I'll never forget it because as someone who has 2 children with cystic fibrosis, alarm bells start going off in my head when I hear leftists, Democrats, start using this Marxist ideology. It's not about you often hear this messaging like, oh, abortion's a human, healthcare is a human right. They also say abortion's a human right too, but you hear that, and a lot of people are like well-meaning. I mean, they just want to help people have good healthcare. They don't understand that by advancing socialist healthcare, all of us are going to get crappy healthcare. It's not about advancing good healthcare. It's about all of us getting uniformly bad healthcare. But alarm bells start to go off my head because we still have a discussion in our country about quality adjusted life years. And there's still conversations happening when big expensive drugs get created to help, cystic fibrosis, what my 2 children suffer from. There's actually been conversations at board levels of like, well, what's the added life years of someone who has cystic fibrosis? What's the quality that they're going to get by taking this drug? And does the quality justify the cost to the collective? Like, these are conversations that literally happen every day in our healthcare system. So yeah, Marxism, cultural Marxism is here in America, and it's insidious, and it needs to be ended. Because communism, Marxism always leads to more death and destruction. And it usually starts with more abortions. So what do you need to do? What's your action item for this segment? Pray for America. Pray for the future of our country. Pray for New York City. This episode is brought to you by the Pro-Life Gen shop and our brand new, hot off the press, Planned Parenthood Tears mug. This is a custom Kristan Hawkins designed mug that I specifically requested because I have been waiting for a long, long time for Planned Parenthood to be funded. So for $10, actually $9.99, you can get your Planned Parenthood Tears mug. So just go to shop.prolifegen.org and get your mug today, and you can sip your coffee or energy drink, in my case, in a brand new mug, celebrating the fact that we finally defunded Planned Parenthood because of you and I. Next, I want to talk to you about something very disturbing, even more disturbing than my first segment about how Democrats are out to destroy our country, and that is about IVF jewelry. So a UK-based company called Blossom Keepsake is offering jewelry made with the leftover human beings created in the IVF lab that parents do not want to implant or freeze or donate or need. Now let's go back up and look at the numbers. The average woman who does IVF is 36. Takes 3 rounds for her to have a 50-50 shot at getting a live birth of a baby. In that process, she's going to spend tens of thousands of dollars of, government-funded healthcare or her own money, and more than 20 children, her children in embryonic form, will either die or be frozen, potentially indefinitely, in the process. So if you have a live birth, you're likely to have 20 kids either who have died in the process of you creating this child that it will be birthed, or will be frozen indefinitely. Maybe she doesn't do 3 rounds. Maybe she does more. That's just the average. So this company said, that's interesting. There's all these leftover embryos, human beings. We use dehumanizing terms to justify atrocities always, right? We can turn them into keepsakes. So let me just read you from their website. They said, we specialize in crafting unique and meaningful keepsakes using unused IVF embryos. Now, they don't say children or human embryos, like they're like not real people. Our mission is to offer families a beautiful way to honor this chapter of the story by transforming these embryos into timeless pieces that can be cherished forever. This jewelry company is clarifying something that goes unsaid in the IVF industry. So thank you, I guess, for that. It views children, real, living human beings, as accessories for parents, and for parents to do whatever the hell they want with their children. Can't have a baby? No problem. We'll make some in a lab. Maybe you can have a live birth. Hope one of them sticks. And if you have leftover babies, don't worry. We will kill them by putting them into a ring. IVF jewelry is sadly just the logical extension of the way IVF itself views children. The company claims that each embryo is treated with utmost care, dignity, respect by experienced team of artisans. Which part would be dignified or caring? The part where they take the living child who's been frozen in a freezer and thaw them in a petri dish so they die? The part where the child is stuffed into a package, thrown into a truck, and then shipped to some jewelry shop? The part where the tiny human is glued into a ring? Or the part that the tiny human is then shown off to the parents, friends, and family? Look, there's my dead kid I paid to create and paid to kill. Asking for a friend, which part was most dignified? I'm not sure. These leftover babies are literally collateral damage in an industry that has procreation completely backwards. We are supposed to sacrifice our own wants and needs for that of our children. That is how we were made. It's not the other way around. We do not have the right to create children, to discard them, to freeze them, or to stuff them in jewelry. Our obligations to children are much, much greater. And this is why I encourage you to keep speaking up about IVF, because most people have no idea, have not looked into it. We need to be having this conversation. And the reason I wanted to talk about this is because this gives you the perfect way to talk to your friends who maybe are pro IVF into why this is a corrupt industry. Once again, not saying that everyone who's used IVF is corrupt or morally bankrupt, or not saying that a child conceived in IVF is not valuable. That's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is this shouldn't be allowed. All right, next up, I'm going to talk about some newish polling that just came out. I don't know, somebody brought it up on social media like it was new, but it kind of came out in August. But it's a national survey by McLaughlin and Associates, and this is one of Trump's pollsters, that found that more than 7 in 10 American voters say a doctor's visit should be required before chemical abortion pills are prescribed. You think? It's like common sense, right? This was literally common sense that was policy until the Biden administration's FDA, using the guise of COVID, got rid of all of the common sense safety standards on chemical abortion pills in 2021. Now abortion pills literally can be ordered online, shipped anywhere in the country to any person, even a sex abuser, with no conversation, with no assurances that the woman's not experiencing a life-threatening ectopic pregnancy. Absolutely nothing. That's what's happening. Now, according to the Catholic News Agency, the McLaughlin Associates poll interviewed 1,600 participants, said that 71% of voters approved of the proposal that required a doctor's visit in order for the chemical abortion drug to be prescribed to terminate an unwanted pregnancy. The poll also found that 30% of voters had significant concerns about the safety of the abortion pill. This is huge. Of course, voters should be concerned, because a massive review that was published by the EEPC, the Ethics and Public Policy Center, in May, showing actual insurance records of more than 800,000 Americans, found that 1 in 9 women who take the chemical abortion pill end up in the ER with severe adverse effects like hemorrhage and sepsis. But no one's talking about that. We still keep hearing things like, oh, taking chemical abortion pills like taking Tylenol, which, by the way, last Friday, the Florida Attorney General announced he's suing Planned Parenthood under the Consumer False Claims Act in his state, because Planned Parenthood keeps repping these lies about chemical abortion pills, and they have a duty not to lie to the consumer. I'm so proud of that. I'm so excited for that, because we actually met with the Florida Attorney General months ago on this very issue. And I love after we meet with AGs, then we see the fruit of those meetings months later. I'm like, oh, they were listening. It's so exciting. They got the memo, they read it, and they enacted it. Because this is a serious thing. It doesn't even matter if you're pro-life or pro-choice. The chemical abortion pills are being given to girls without a doctor's visit, without confirming she's pregnant, without confirming she's even a girl, making sure she's not experiencing a life-threatening ectopic pregnancy, but not making sure that she's not being coerced into this abortion. They're literally being mailed. We're going to be unveiling undercover footage this week, and I hope to cover it on my next podcast, showing how disturbingly easy it is to get your hands on chemical abortion pills, even in pro-life red states. They go straight to the home with no instructions, no information of like, hey, by the way, if you start bleeding this much, it's too much. It's called hemorrhaging. You need to go to the ER. With nothing to anyone. We expect this, I know, in pro-death states like Illinois, New York, and California. But a lot of people expect that pro-life states have this figured out. This isn't happening. It's 100% happening. This is why Students for Life Action introduced our model legislation, the Anti-Chemical Abortion Pill Trafficking Act. I know it's a mouthful. In several states, we saw Texas actually pass this bill, and the governor signed into law. It was called the Women and Child Protection Act this September. It's the first of its kind that actually cracks down on these illegal shippers of chemical abortion pills, that allows women and families and really anyone in the state of Texas to sue abortionists in Illinois, New York, and California shipping these drugs illegally into their states. But now we have to get this bill passed in every Republican pro-life state. We almost passed it in Oklahoma. It was literally killed when an abolitionist attached an abolition amendment to it, because he didn't think it was good enough just to stop the illegal chemical abortions and go after criminally and civilly after the abortionists. He wanted women to face jail time, which he knew wasn't going to pass. And so that killed the bill. Yes, welcome to my life. But we've got to see anti-chemical abortion pills pass, anti-chemical abortion pill legislation pass first in the pro-life states to get a handle on the fact that even if you live in a pro-life state or a state that's banned abortion, abortions are still happening because these drugs are being illegally shipped into your state, violating the Federal Comstock Act. No excuse. So if you want to learn more, once again, closing up this section, go to thisischemicalabortion.com. Learn more about chemical abortion. That's where we kind of put all of our news. We'll have some exciting news coming in the next couple weeks. Pray for me this week. I have a big meeting at the EPA about some things I've been talking to you about for the past several months when it comes to chemical abortion. So keep us in your prayers for that and kind of stay tuned for more of what you can do to attack chemical abortion in your community, in your state house. All right. I'm going to get to a couple of things I saw on social media that you may actually might have seen or may want to pay attention to.
In the surrogacy contrast, it is just normal to have abortion clauses.
Okay, so this is a clip I saw on X this week. I spent a lot of time on airports last week. A surrogate was forced to abort the baby because the baby was missing a few fingers. So this is looks like it's some sort of event that's happening, not in English. I think it must be a Spanish event. Let's see what they have to say.
So the commissioning parents have the choice, if they wish, to demand an abortion to the surrogate.
The purchasers, commissioning parents, just FYI.
So there was this case where a surrogate mother was pregnant. She was in her third trimester.
Which, by the way, throws out the entire pro-choice movement's argument that it's about her body, her choice. Because when you become a surrogate, it's no longer your body. Your body, you are now a slave. Now you're being paid, but you're a slave for someone else.
And the baby, after the ultrasound, was found missing 2 fingers. And the commissioning parents did not want a child missing 2 fingers. So they asked the surrogate mother to perform an abortion. She was in her third trimester, I have to say, full-grown baby. Indeed. And so she refused. She wanted to keep a baby. She refused. She said no. Unfortunately, she received a letter from lawyers of the commissioning parents saying that the contract had to be enforced and that she had to get an abortion or else she would not receive the money. And in plus of that, she would be sued. So she was forced to abort this baby just because he was missing 2 fingers.
IVF treats human beings as if they are disposable. And they're only here by the wants and desires of their commissioning or bought and paid for parents. When you add surrogacy into the mix, now you've added another human into this who's now also being treated as if she is just a part, an incubator. All those things that they always say pro-lifers are how we treat women. This is what surrogacy does. It treats women purely as incubators. That baby was killed because he or she wasn't perfect enough for its commissioning parents. I don't think you can get more sick than that. All right. Next, I'm going to bring up an X post that started a whole flurry of conversation.
Is it good that women can vote in America? I don't think so, and here's why. Nearly every legalized moral atrocity of the last 100 years was made possible by the female vote. Abortion and homosexuality would likely still be illegal if not for the female vote. Mass immigration in the welfare state rode on the backs of the female vote. Nearly every modern Democrat, including Obama and Biden, were elected because of the female vote. Even last night, the new Muslim New York City mayor Mondami won specifically because of the female vote. The 19th Amendment has been a moral and political tragedy for America, but why? Women were not made to lead, but to follow and to feel. This is God's design, and it's good within the family and the household. But emotions cannot be what is used to rule and govern a nation. Statistically and generally speaking, women vote for whatever feels most kind or peaceful or safe to their emotions. Women crave security and comfort, and whoever promises those things wins their loyalty. The problem is evil men know this, and they exploit it. For example, women are twice as likely to men to be seduced into an affair. They are 26% more likely to be financially scammed online. They are 3 times more likely to fall prey to psychics and tarot card readings and astrology and mediums. The same emotional vulnerability that shows up there also shows up in politics. Many call it suicidal empathy. So I believe that we should return to the household vote, where women share their thoughts with their fathers or their husbands, and the men in their life make the final decision. Men are not perfect, but they are far more fit to rule with logic, and they are less likely to be deceived in political matters. So I don't believe that we should repeal the 19th Amendment because I don't love women. I believe we should repeal the 19th Amendment because I love America, and I love American women enough to protect them and our nation from their political exploitation.
Well, I mean, I'd be happy to debate this person, but you probably wouldn't debate me. You probably need to debate my husband because I'm too emotional to have a rational conversation with. If you want to talk about like being rational and logical, don't you think it would be easier to, I don't know, win women, have better messaging for women, communicate out conservative policies in a better way to women, and just like win elections that way, rather than trying to get like, I don't know, 180 million Americans through 37 different states to ratify a constitutional amendment to take away our right to vote? Like, some people were like, wow, we reversed Roe, so now we can reverse the 19th Amendment. Hard things can happen. Yeah. Roe took like a presidential election, a couple of presidential elections, some Senate elections, and 5 people in the Supreme Court. To ratify a new constitutional amendment, you got to get it passed, by Congress. More than half, by the way. Then it has to go to 37 state legislatures, and you have to win all those elections because then those state legislatures have to ratify the amendment too. That's like a lot more votes. So just like purely from a logical perspective, wouldn't it be better just to have better messaging to women? This is literally the opposite of better messaging to women. In fact, I kind of wonder if this guy's taking money from the left. Pro-abortion feminists have always said, if you take away the right to abortion, they're going to take away our right to vote next. And pro-lifers have always been like, what the heck are you talking about? What are you smoking? That doesn't make any sense. Yeah, I think this dude just is shrill for the left. He's literally helping the left win elections. And if you want to talk about non-emotional, rational numbers, let's just look at other numbers, right? Men commit 88% of gun homicides in America. By this logic, we need to repeal the Second Amendment. Stat. Or we should say maybe men shouldn't have the right to bear arms, but maybe only it's women. 32 million men voted for Kamala Harris in 2024. Total losers, right? That's what my friend Liz Wheeler put on Instagram, and I love it. She goes, total losers, right? That's good. Should those 32 million men be stripped of their right to vote? No. Liz also put on Twitter, she's so good with numbers. She was like, 98% of convicted rapists are men. Should all men be prohibited from sexual activity? Because that's a pretty stunning indictment. Apparently men can't keep it in their pants without horrifically harming women. Try to actually win women. This is something that pro-life women, conservative women have been saying for years to the GOP. You need women in the room. When you're having a conversation about policy and how you're going to message a policy, you need to have women in the room to say, yep, when you say this, this is what we hear. This is why we always want to have diverse coalitions in politics, right? Because you want to hear how other people with different worldviews are, receiving your message and what's motivating them to act. But we don't do that in politics. It's because of men like this who say women should be barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen. I don't know. I'm literally convinced that these guys are getting money from the left to propagate these crazy theories. And in the process, what they're doing is they're turning more and more women away from actually hearing the message of truth, of hope and love that you will find in the pro-life or conservative movements, not a message of cultural Marxism and destruction that you hear on the left. This literally only pushes women further. He's not wrong about voting. Women tend to vote more left, except for this last election. You tend to have a lot of women, suburban housewives and moms who actually have to work and feed their kids that were very concerned about some of the things Joe Biden had done in our economy and the price of eggs. So it's not always the truth, but you have to be able to speak to women. You have to want to win women. These guys just want us to sit down, shut up because we are women. And that's not going to happen. I can guarantee you it's not going to happen. Next clip. I'm going to show you a clip of me at the University of Minnesota a few weeks ago after Charlie died. It was one of my first campuses I was back at, and a group of young men, they call themselves Students for Abolitionists, decided to come to my speech and hold signs the entire time with a QR code because they wanted to get in my our video camera shot because the Students for Abolition they're trying to go to Students for Life chapters and be like, Students for Life is evil because it's led by an evil woman. Start a Students for Abolition chapter. And then they try to ask me questions in the Q&A and monopolize the Q&A time from the other students who had gathered. And it was very clear where they were going. And so I asked some very hard questions of these students. And I want you, this conversation was lasted forever, but at the end of the day, I just wasn't playing anymore. We have dealt with abolitionists, these abolitionists, which is funny because I was like the first leader to use the word abolition and they tried to steal it. But we have dealt with them at the state level in politics. And it's very discouraging because as I talked to you all about in February, I had that big heart to heart podcast for you when we were talking about punishing women. And I've talked about like how some of my friends disagree with me. I disagree with some of my friends. I think that there's three camps, right? I think there's those who say we should never punish women who seek abortions. There's these abolitionist men who say we should punish them now and that's going to solve all abortions, which it's not because that's what happened. That was kind of the law before 1973. And that's not how the law was practiced. That's not actually what happened. Abortions were happening, illegal abortions were happening. And then there's like this third camp, which I fall in. And I would say most of the Students for Life leaders I talk to kind of fall in this third camp, which is maybe, but not now. We have to change the culture. We have to make abortion illegal. And then, if you still see the depravity going on and killing going on, then you go back and say, wait a minute, we need to further address this. But you have to first change the law and the culture to generally so people understand abortion is killing and it's wrong before you start getting into like punishments and all this crazy talk. It's just like skipping over steps. And so there's a rational, to that man's earlier, we have rational reasons and logical reasons for wanting to follow a very prescribed course to seek change, because that's how we've gotten to this point in the pro-life movement. This goal is incrementalism. That's our strategy, but that's not the goal. The goal is abolition, incrementalism towards abolition. You have to take a strategic step to make abortion slowly unthinkable in the eyes of Americans, start changing culture till you get to the point where all abortions will be banned in our country. And that's what, National Right to Life and others did in the 1990s with the partial birth abortion ban. A lot of these types of folks would be like, that abortion ban didn't save lives. Maybe because they started using digoxin abortions. However, the 8 years of a fight, the 2 vetoes from President Clinton finally being signed into law from President Bush in 2021. The important part of that fight was that in that process, we educated all of America about how gruesome and awful abortions were. And all of America, because that fight went on for so long, learned that these late-term babies are being butchered. And it changed mind. You can directly look at polling before that fight for partial birth abortion ban began and after. The polling literally shifted. We were at our lowest point in the pro-life movement before that debate began. Lowest point. Gen X was totally sold in on abortion. Then you saw this shift, and then you had 4D ultrasounds come out and GE doing commercials for us. Incrementalism towards abolition. That's what works, and that's what we've seen replicated throughout our country's history. So anyway, I had a long night of Q&A with these gentlemen who obviously didn't know what they were getting themselves into, and their national organization set them up in not a great way. I kind of felt bad for them. But I want to show you this clip and explain it a little further. What's your position that any pro-life law that ends abortion but doesn't prosecute women should be killed?
I think it's a bill that
That's all I need to know. At this point, I'll keep playing. I told the kid to sit down, shut up. Because that, to me, is a moral issue.
I think it's a bill that God doesn't bless because he calls for equal weights and measures to be applied in all law.
So if I'm about ready to pass a bill, and I have all the votes to pass a bill that will end, abortions after a baby's heartbeat can be heard at 6 weeks, but doesn't end all abortions, are you going to actively work to kill that bill, make it not pass?
Yes.
That's wrong. That's sin. That's letting your pride kill human children. I can see you could disagree with that bill. You can be like, you know what, it's not good enough. Trust me, it ain't good enough. It's not the life at conception bill. It's not a bill that bans all abortions. But you would let babies die and work against that bill to kill that bill? I don't have anything else to say to you because you want babies to die from that. So that, I'm sorry for the gentleman earlier, I do tend to get a little emotional when people say that they want babies to die. This is the crux of the abolitionist problem. Our team, when we see abolitionist bills introduced in states, our team knows we ignore those bills. We don't spend supporter money trying to kill those bills, we just ignore those bills. Because honestly, their bills moving forward advance our bills. Because my bills usually, they don't. Well, they don't have prosecution for women in them, and so they don't have the votes. They don't have the political game, the chops to defend champions in the primaries or elect folks. And so what happens is those bills ultimately fail, but in the process, they will advance the ball forward in a pro-life-ish direction, where we can then sweep in and say, "Hey, look, we have another bill that you can pass." I have a very real problem with people who disagree with a tactic or a strategy in the pro-life movement and then work to kill that strategy or tactic. Because at the end of the day, and like I said in this video, if a bill doesn't end all abortions, it's never going to be good enough. This is what we get accused of all the time, right? I get accused of this all the time in Washington, D.C. I got a call after the BBB passed by the Senate Majority Leader's office because I wasn't being grateful enough that we defunded Planned Parenthood for 1 year, and I needed to be more grateful that we defunded Planned Parenthood for a year. And because I kept saying, well, it's a good start, but we had 10 years. What the hell happened? You have to, fire the Democratic parliamentarian who stripped the 10 years to 1 year in the BBB. I wasn't being grateful enough. Guess what? That's my job. I'm a human rights activist. I am never happy. I'm never going to be satisfied until all abortions end. But I have a real moral problem when someone says your bill isn't good enough. It's not going to save all the babies. Therefore, I'm going to kill your bill and have nothing pass. Because what that means is pragmatically, logically, more babies will die. And God does not sanction that. God does not ordain that more babies should die. He says to give Caesar what is Caesar's, right? We have to engage. We have to pay our taxes. We have to engage in the political process while being lights of Christ everywhere we go. That's not being the light of Christ to say, you know what, this bill isn't perfect enough. We don't like it because it doesn't protect all human beings. Therefore, we're going to kill it. And we're going to let these human beings die. If we have the opportunity to save life, we take it. And we save those lives, because every single one of those lives, every single one of those children were created in God's image. That's not being a Christian witness. That's using Christianity to stroke our ego and be like, I'm the most moral person here because I said kill all pro-life bills until they're perfect. Guess what? We live in a fallen world. It ain't going to be perfect. Politics isn't perfect. Politics is messy. It involves compromise. It's long. It takes transformational change, cultural change to get bills passed. And putting yourself above it or saying, I'm just not going to engage in the political process, or I'm going to blow it all up just because I can say I'm the more Christian. Yeah, we're not called to do that either. Remember wasn't there the whole scripture about being wise? There's lots of scriptures about being wise. I don't want to quote scripture. It's an impossible task with abolitionists because they'll just quote another scripture from the Old Testament, probably the ones, from Deuteronomy about rules, about purity. If I'm on my period, I got to be on the other edge of town in a tent because I'm unclean. But that's crap. And I take exception to that, because if you can save lives, you can save lives. If you are standing in front of a burning building and there's an orphanage of kids and those kids are screaming for help and you knew there was no chance, no way of saving all the kids on all 4 stories of this building, you would call 911. You would get as many people as you could there to help you. And you would rush, I would hope and assume, you would rush into that building to save as many of those babies as you possibly can, knowing you're not going to save all those children. Some of the babies, some of those children are going to die, but you're going to save as many as you can, because that's what we're called to do, to protect the weak and protect the vulnerable. We're not going to be punished for not being able to save those lives. We're going to be punished if we don't go in that building and go, well, can't save them all. Let them all die. That's what will be punished. That would be a sin. So anyway, next time you have an abolitionist who tells you that all pro-life laws are evil and that, we can't work to pass any pro-life laws unless they're perfect, which we know logistically, pragmatically, we can't get past, I would show them this clip.
Hey Pro-Life Gen, it's Kristan here. And if you're like me, spring is a perfect time to do some spring cleaning around the house. And I can't think of a better way to refresh your space than with brand new, ultra soft bed sheets. Well, it does get better. With bed sheets that support saving babies. That's why I'm so excited to share with you that Students for Life America has teamed up with Cloud Bedsheet Fundraising. to give $20 from every set of sheets you purchase directly to our pro-life mission. These sheets are high quality, ultra soft, and have a 99% satisfaction rate. And yes, I have them in my own home and I love them. It's so easy to be part of this. You head to 123fundraiser.com/life and choose from beautiful colors and the sizes that you need, and then you'll be making impact for life with every set of sheets you buy. Plus, they come with 100% satisfaction money back guarantee, so there's no risk, only reward. Shop now at 123fundraiser.com/life and help save babies with every cozy night's sleep you have.
Anyway, thank you all for joining today's episode of Kristan Hawkins Show. I gotta go take care of my kids and feed them lunch. So make sure you subscribe and follow for more discussions like this. If you want to hear from me daily on pro-life news or things I think you should see or know, text my name, Kristan, to 53445. Until next week, keep speaking up for the voiceless. Bye, everyone.